This is episode 57 of Michael Jackson's Dream Lives On, an academic conversation. Your hosts are academic Elizabeth Amizu and academic Karin and Elizabeth. And today we have a very special guest, filmmaker Marcos Cabotá. In this exclusive, we will discuss his documentary Sonic Fantasy and talk about documentaries in an academic setting. The main premise of this show is to what extent can a documentary be seen as a filmic truth finder, and how, or if so, can this be used for academic research? Now, before we dive into the questions, let me introduce Marcos Cabotá. Marcos Cabotá, born in Mallorca, Spain, became obsessed with being a director when he was 5 years old after his mother took him to the cinema to watch Back to the Future. This film made him wreck all household appliances to build flux capacitors. When his mom told him it was just cinema and all a lie, that the director made that all up, he knew that that was what he wanted to do. He made a documentary that nominated him for the Goya Award, I Am Your Father, and a movie requested by the Mallorca football team called 100 Years Later. And recently, he made a documentary, Sonic Fantasy. And I want to welcome you, Marcos. We are very grateful that you could make some time for us in your very busy schedule.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here with you. I appreciate the work you do. And first of all, excuse my English. I'll try my best.
It's perfectly fine.
We've heard you on interviews before. Your English is fine, Marcos.
Okay, thank you.
And if Liz says so, then it's true.
Thanks.
So before we go deeper into Sonic Fantasy itself, we have some questions about the documentary in regard to its truth-finding capacity. And with that in context, we can refer to Bad, Off the Wall. Both were directed by...
Bad 25?
Yeah, Bad 25, directed by...
Spike Lee.
Spike Lee, exactly. LN. Doesn't come out of my mouth, but we know what it is.
Leaving Neverland.
The Real Michael Jackson and Square One.
Mm-hmm.
That Off the Wall one was Michael Jackson's journey from Motown to Off the Wall.
To Off the Wall, yeah.
If you need a very long title for your documentary.
Yeah. I have to say, I haven't watched The Real Michael Jackson. I think
good. You didn't miss anything.
Okay. So,
but we can take it into the context anyway.
Okay,
maybe
great.
Because Liz and I watched it, and we can give you some information. So we see an increasing lack of distinction between documentary and fiction films, and this implies there was at first distinction. And how do you think this has influenced the perception of the audience, and how has it influenced you as a documentary maker?
Okay, when we speak about Spike Lee's documentary, Bad 25, Off the Wall, LN, and Square One, we need to understand they are totally different documentaries, not in the meaning they have, but also in the way that they are done. Spike Lee's, to answer your question, I need to talk about first Spike Lee's documentaries. I'm a huge Spike Lee fan, not only because of its Michael Jackson documentaries, but because all of his work. And he does, for Bad 25 and From Motown to Off the Wall documentary, it's very linear documentaries where he goes song by song. On Bad 25, he starts with Bad, then he talks about The Way You Make Me Feel, and on and on. So they're, straight to the point, very informative. And I think they're documentaries made for fans. What do I mean made for fans? It's difficult to get this documentary Bad 25, which I love, which I totally love, because I'm a huge Michael Jackson fan. And to see it with someone that is not a Michael Jackson fan and watch the documentary, because It's all about the images. It's all about the rare footage. It's all about the music, the acapellas, the watching Michael in the studio. And this is great for us. It's great for me. But I don't know, it's, for example, great for my girlfriend. She's not a Michael Jackson fan. Maybe she doesn't, 15 minutes on the documentary, she doesn't care anymore because it's the same way. But they're great documentaries. And in an academic way, it's interesting to have all those stories, all those songs from Bad and from Off the Wall in a documentary. So they can be researched on the future. And, Spike Lee did an incredible job. He's an Oscar-winning, Academy Award-winning director. So, he's one of the best. Ellen is a total different thing. Ellen, it's a documentary made for everyone. Obviously not for Michael Jackson fans, but I mean for the rest of the world. So what the director did, he did a narrative that it's, even though it's invented, because I don't believe a word of the documentary, and me as a director, I see all the fakes, I see all the things he did to try to make this documentary real and not, because I'm a director, I work with actors every day, I work on the studio editing the movies, so I know the little tricks and you can do to make something real look real, and you can see all that all over the documentary. So he does a narrative story that starts from a beginning and finishes in it has an ending and has a story, and that's the only purpose of that, is to have the people watching the documentary from the beginning and waiting to see where it goes. So they're like two totally different things. I don't think Ellen is a documentary that will be in the history of documentaries for the academic students in research, because it's already proven false, and I think it's an example of a mockumentary, of a fake thing, and it could be precisely used for that. This is how we make fake documentaries. This is how we change the minds of millions of people, and this is the power of documentaries in academic way and in real world way. You can just invent a thing and do a 4 hours documentary and change the perception of a whole planet. And this is what they did. We're slowly going back, to the beginning, to the people are understanding, not only Michael Jackson fans, but everyone is understanding that it's not true. It's not a true film, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous how you can change the mind, and change the mind with using perversion and using this method as we're gonna talk about really difficult subject to talk about, and we're gonna expose it in a pervert way, and we're gonna make someone look pervert, and it's hard to understand, but the people have accepted that, and I hope during the ages it will vanish away, and everyone will forget. And finally, Square One, I've watched it. I think it has a great beginning, and it's a necessary documentary to understand the other side of the story, and I hope it's important to have this documentary, because if someone comes to you, not a fan or a fan, and says, I've watched Ellen, and now you need to watch this, maybe you understand other, open your mind, you see other things, and there's so it was Danny, his name was Danny Wu, I guess.
Wu,
yeah. Danny Wu did a great job doing that, and all his team, and there's more people behind this film, and it's just a documentary that was necessary. Personally, I hope, I wish that it never existed, because if Square One didn't exist, it means that Ellen never existed. So I wish it was a documentary that never existed, but it's necessary now that we have LN on the market. So what I try to mean that stories, documentaries are dangerous, are good, but also very dangerous, and they can change the mind of people. And when you're in a position like I am, that I make documentaries, that can have been seen on Netflix and on other platforms, on film festivals, you have to be very precise, and you have to be very clear with yourself that what you're doing, you're going to change minds and you're going to influence some people. So I don't know how Dan Reed sleeps nighttime, because he knows that he lied on these documentaries. He know he wasn't truthful. The difference between Dan Reed and Danny Wu, Danny Wu and Spike Lee. The difference between them is that they told the truth. They can sleep at night. They are good people. They will go to heaven.
Yes.
And, and they can be okay with themselves. I couldn't do what Dan did or the other two guys that they were in the film, because you're gonna have to live the rest of your life knowing that you lied for money, and you lied for get some protagonism, to get some a status. I don't understand very well what was their main goal, but I guess it was money, and for that they've lied to everyone, and we've seen it recently in other there was the Johnny Depp thing. I don't know, there's some things that they try to do for money, and it's hard to live with those things, and I don't know how Dan Reed is gonna sleep peacefully the rest of his life.
Yeah, I read somewhere that he said, "I'm the shark of documentaries." And apparently he made more documentaries also about terrorism that he just sucked out of his thumb. So that's probably his
answer, Marcos. Really lovely answer.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. But in the end, it's the integrity, isn't it?
Integrity, that's a word. Yeah, that's integrity.
Yeah.
That's integrity. Danny Wu and Spike Lee, they have integrity. They said the truth, and you can say that. I'm a filmmaker, and as I told you before, I know when a documentary is lying to me, and when I know the tricks, and you can see truth in Danny Wu's documentary and Spike Lee's documentaries. You don't see that on LN. You don't see that.
No, you don't.
No, you don't see that.
No.
It's like a movie. It's faked. Everything's like super prepared. It's the interviews, they're not even natural.
No.
I make hundreds of interviews. I know how they work. I know how we set the mood, how we do everything, and it's not truth. It's not. You can't. It's you see it right away.
But
so
you can see it in their faces too if you look well. You can see it in the faces that it's not. And also,
right it's
very
edited.
bad actors.
It's repeated. I've never said to any one of the people I've interviewed before could you repeat this answer again? Could you do it again? Mm-hmm. And you see that there's the real edition on Living Neverland. You see it.
Yeah. But how has this? What is your personal opinion in general, not specifically Living Neverland, but about documentary as truth-finding medium? Because I think that the integrity of photography is now linked to the perception of the reader, of the film text, the reader, so the public who reads that image and who sees that as this must be true because I see it in the photo, which is apparently something that happens in postmodern documentaries, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And how has that influenced you? How makes that important for you? What is your opinion about that? Can we still use documentary as a truth-finding medium?
It's a very difficult question because are documentaries truth? The easy answer is no. Mm-hmm. I watch a lot of documentaries, and even though some of them they want to, you know, there's like 80% truth, there's always the 20% of fiction. And even if they wanted to make a good documentary and they wanted to say the truth, you can't control what people are saying inside the documentary. For example, me, I've done the Sonic Fantasy, my last documentary, or let's talk about I Am Your Father. That's a documentary I did before, and I had this man called David Prowse that he used to be Darth Vader on the Star Wars films. So he's got something he had something with George Lucas, because George Lucas wouldn't let him be Darth Vader when they took the mask of the character. So George Lucas got another actor. So I wanted to tell the truth, but it was his truth because I interviewed him and I tried to reach George Lucas. George Lucas declined my invitation. So I had David Prowse's truth. And I didn't do anything. I didn't edit. I didn't repeat. I didn't create a narrative but the truth of my documentary is the truth that David Prowse said to me. So when documentary was released, and it was a quite success actually. We had a lot of positive comments, but there were also negative comments of people, George Lucas fans, that they thought that he was not telling the truth. But again, that's not my fault. You know, I just put the camera and it's not against George Lucas. I love George Lucas. I love Star Wars. So, but what I'm trying to say is that it's not only in the hands of the director, it's in the hands of the people you have from the documentary. So in Sonic Fantasy, I'm talking about the creation of thriller, and me as a creator, as a director of the documentary, I have to believe every word that all those people said to me during my interviews with them. And that's why when I'm watching a documentary, it has to be clear that what I'm watching is their truth. Is your truth the same as my truth? We don't know. I always think that even though the director has a good intention of not manipulation, you know, every truth is different, and there's exceptions with, you know, I don't want to talk again about it, but Ellen, it's you can clearly see that, you know, that it's all done from the beginning. But hopefully there's not a lot of documentaries like that. I believe in people. I believe in the truth of people. I believe that there's good intentions, at least at the beginning. And so most of the directors and people doing documentaries, they're telling their truths, and it's one point of view. And so answering your question, when I'm watching a documentary, I'm watching a truth, but not the whole truth. Probably there's more side of the story.
Yeah. So you could say that documentary is a constructed reality in a way.
Yeah, it is. If I have to be truthful, it is. It is.
So in the academic context, and Liz will ask you more in relation to Sonic Fantasy later also, but you do your research first because you already know what you want, and then you do your research, and then if you find so in the I'm Your Father, you say, well, that was his truth, but there is another truth that's from the other person. And if you can't get that together.
Exactly. There's both or more points of views. But the good thing is when you, for example, talking about I Am Your Father, some people that went out of the document, when they saw the documentary, they said to me, I liked it, but I think he wasn't right. And that's okay. You know, I'm okay with people disagreeing with the main character of my documentary.
Yeah.
I do. That's something that I actually like. It's a position. You as a human being, you have the position to agree or disagree.
Yeah.
So this is important. So yes, it's not, you do your research, you read everything you can, you watch everything you can, you listen everything you can, and then you need to go with all of that to the interview and to your documentary. But remember, documentaries normally they're 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, 2 hours long. You can't fit everything. Later we will talk about a sonic fantasy. But for example, with I Am Your Father, my other documentary, there's a lot of stuff that I didn't put inside the documentary because I didn't have the time. I did have the knowledge. I know there's, people come to me and say, what did you say that? What did you? Oh yeah, I'd love to, but it was on the script. But
yeah,
the documentary would be like 10 hours long. So yes, you choose as a creator, you choose what you think it's important. But we're not perfect, so I can be wrong, and anyone can be wrong. So I guess that when you're watching a documentary 100% truthful, doubt about it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's important also when you do research.
Yeah,
because you talk interviews, only now you have filmed interviews, and lately you see a lot of academics putting interviews as a secondary resource. I remember when I did my master's and later worked on my PhD, it was explicitly told, never do that unless you can back it with substantial material.
Evidence, yeah.
Because if you can't back that, you can't put that in your writing, and so
exactly.
And that's the whole thing, because
you can see, sorry to interrupt. You can see when you're watching a documentary if they're well documented. You can see that. You can. Yeah. It's so it's very important to do your research first, and even if you need to take a year just of doing research, do a year of research and then go for it. But if you don't have your research, you will see it on the documentary.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Amazing. You kind of answer all my questions in one.
And so I'm sorry.
No, it's fantastic, because I have the answer, and we have the answer, and we will continue with the questions about of course sonic fantasy, because we know we've seen it. But before we go into that, I would like to congratulate you, because I watched it yesterday, with a beautiful documentary. I really thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you.
So well structured, so beautifully shot, and so emotional at moments.
Thank you very much.
I particularly also loved the way you put animation into it, in a way that it blends with everything. It was amazing. And then
thank you.
I think it's a beautiful tribute to Bruce Swedien, who in his role as sound engineer never got the credits that Michael as an artist received. So before we go further into sonic fantasy, I will read the synopsis for our listeners, so they know what it is about. Okay. In every profession, there is someone who changes the rules of the game. In music, that person is Bruce Swedien. In the early 80s in Los Angeles, Bruce embarked on a project that revolutionized the music industry forever. For the first time, those involved in that project tell the unknown story behind the work that Bruce did, and how his talent ended up being an essential piece in the history of popular culture. Sonic Fantasy introduces you to the man behind the best music you've ever heard. Liz, can you ask some questions, please?
Okay. Marcos, I was very interested in your artistic process, especially as you're a writer-director. To what extent is there a trade-off between your writing and directing? Is the writing aspect finished so that the directing aspect can begin? Are you essentially wearing two hats all the time, or do you stop being a writer so you can direct?
Good question. Good question. I think I've always have two hats because it's you never start to the process of creation of editing, the process of creating a piece, it never stops. Even if you're in the edition room, even if you already wrote it, even though you've already directed and you're in post-production, you need to rearrange and rewrite some things. So you're all the time writing. But obviously the big part is, we talked about the research, and I can take a year doing a research and half a year writing, and then I leave it all to the director, because the director trusts what the writer has done, like months prior to that. But there's always a part of my brain that it's always rearranging and rewriting and trying to get a better piece.
That's so fascinating. So you always have a kind of hand-in-hand relationship. So
yes,
the writer knows I can still edit.
Yes.
There's still changes I can make.
Yes, because when you especially in documentaries, you don't know what the answers you're gonna get from the people you interview. So sometimes I write the script, I think what the answers are going to be. I try to create a narrative of the story I want to tell, but you never know what's going to happen, because you don't know who's going to say what. And sometimes you're already in your directing process and you're interviewing, for example, Bruce Swedien, and suddenly he says something, and you at that time, your brain says, okay, remember what he said, because that's important, and now you have to go this way. So maybe you got all the interview prepared, for going this way, and then suddenly he says something and says, no, now we have to go this way. So you're like rewriting at the same time you're directing.
That's so fascinating. I remember one line Bruce said something like, we're going to go in there and break every rule.
Yeah. And it was Quincy who said that. Yeah.
Every day in the studio, we broke the rules.
Mm-hmm.
He said about him and Quincy. Every day we went to the studio, we broke the rules.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely beautiful. And what I liked also is that vision, what you see come together so well in this is you have Michael Jackson, the musician, the artist, the visionary. And you have Quincy himself, a very famous composer, film composer, the first Black film composer in the United States, musician and producer who understands his vision. And then you have Bruce, and he is the glue of everything, because he can see in color and hear in color what Michael wants.
Exactly.
That is, to me, is brilliant, and that's why you can.
Yeah, it's like the perfect triangle, the perfect trio. You have the two masters, Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson. You can't get better than that. But you need someone like Bruce, to fix, to join this and to, because you can be. I like documentary starts with Brad Baxter. He, Michael Jackson's musical director, and he explains it very well. And he's the Michael Jackson musical director, so he knows about music. And he says, do you know how difficult it is to do something great and still be great when you put it in a record? That's almost impossible. Yeah. So that was because Quincy and Michael, they were geniuses. We know that. We already know that. They're part of, they're in golden letters in history of, not just music, but I mean in history of the world. They're Quincy and Michael, oh my God, but to get their geniuses from their mind to the sound that we receive in our music home stations or whatever, it's so difficult. And Bruce was the man who did that, and it's because of Bruce. It is because people like Bruce, we can enjoy the masters of people like Michael and Quincy.
Yeah, I had this very strong feeling that he has synergy, so I can I recognize that because when I hear music, I can see colors. And
Yes.
when he was doing, and I had like, oh my God, this man had synergy. And that is so beautiful because then you know exactly when it's right.
He has.
You know.
But he calls it sonic fantasy.
Yeah.
That's the romantic part of it.
Yeah.
I
I loved that part
yeah.
about the what is it? Quincy made that up. The acusonic recording process.
Oh, the
and that all the Japanese people came because they wanted to buy that.
You can't buy something that's come from that. Yeah, that's amazing. So, for example, we were talking about that. You know, we were talking about the truthful of a documentary. Obviously, everything I can 100% say that everything that's in sonic fantasy, it's truth, but there's a lot of pieces missing of the puzzle. I remember my first cut of the film was like 4 hours version of the film, and I had to lower it down to 1.5 hours. And you know, there's a lot of stories that are missing that I couldn't introduce in the final cut. Hopefully, I know maybe in a couple of years there will be like a 4 hours cut, but at this moment I had to do this 1.5 hour cut, and there's a lot of stories missing, and stories like the acusonic process, or the way they talk to between Quincy and Bruce. They talked in culinary terms. They, you know, put a little spicy here and put a little salt of here. You know, like those stories. There's hundreds of stories, and I'm probably someone that was there and sees sonic fantasy will say, "Oh, but you're missing. You didn't talk about, or you didn't show that." And the people we were not there, it was like, you know, that's how they did it. But there's some pieces missing, and this is my truth, because what I left in the documentary is what I thought it was the most important part of all that process, and that's my truth. So it's my truth, your truth, we don't know. We will see. So depending. When you see the 4 hours cut, you'll see if you would have introduced some different parts in the movie.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Karin, should I do the next question?
Yes, please.
Okay, Marcos, listening to other interviews you've done, it's clear that you had a very unique relationship with Michael Jackson. How far did your experiences with Michael inform your creation of the documentary?
Well, I've always been a Michael Jackson fan, and I was very lucky because I met him a lot of times. The first time I met him was in the year 2000, and the last time I met him, it was in the year 2009. Between those two periods, I met him a lot of times. I had the chance to talk to him, and how did he influence me in making documentary? Well, he has influenced me way before I met him. Michael Jackson is my biggest influence ever. When I was a kid, when I was a student, when I was growing up as a person, his music, his interviews, the way he talked, the way he treated people, the way he, you know, I was a huge fan before even meeting him. So he not just influenced in sonic fantasy, but he also influenced in my career. My first film is called Amigos. It's friends in Spanish. It's a movie, and it's dedicated to him because he was my biggest influence, even though it's nothing to do with music or Michael Jackson or anything. His art, his videos, the way he presented himself and his work to the world, you know, you can't get higher than that. It's so obviously when I was doing sonic fantasy, he was present during the whole process. I was doing every day when I was in the, you know, writing room, when I was directing or when I was editing the movie, I was thinking, would Michael like this? Am I being respectful to his work? And so obviously he was there all the time. Michael has been my biggest influence ever, and will ever will be. So that's not going to change. So it's much more than that in Sonic. It's much more than Sonic Fantasy. Everything I've done.
Fantastic.
Beautiful. Yeah.
I noticed that you employed music historians and music journalists in your documentary. Does that choice to do that represent the academic side of you?
Yes, because I knew that when you tell the story, as I said before, there's not only one side, and the rest of the people who saw the movie, they had to do something with Thriller. They were in the studio, they worked on the album, but I needed people that, you know, from an academic point of view, and not a fan point of view, but from an academic point of view, what was Thriller for them, and what was work. And Steve Ivory, that's the music historian. He's a genius. He knows everything about music. He was around when he interviewed Michael in the Jackson 5 era. So imagine that. So
Wow.
he's working Ebony, you know, and all those. I'm a huge fan. And when I got him for the film, I knew from the beginning I wanted him, because he's probably one of the highest personalities in music journalism. So yes, I needed another point of view. I needed they studied music, they studied the stories of music, and yes, I wanted, in an academic point of view, I did want their opinion, even though they were not on the Thriller studio, they were not on Westlake, but they were working at the moment, and they knew about it, and even maybe not maybe even Steve Ivory, he did go to one of the sessions of Thriller, so he was that huge at the moment. So yes, I needed some. I like that point of view of people who know about history, and to explain us and learn from them.
Brilliant. So how do you find the synthesis of artists who were there creating in the creative process, journalists, historians, that you need to make a documentary like Sonic Fantasy? Because I see you as a conductor of an orchestra and having all these moving parts, but it's your job to synthesize and harmonize and bring it all together, and you did that very beautifully. How did you find that process?
It's you've explained it very well. It's a director of an orchestra, because everyone is there. They don't even know each other. You know, maybe they haven't seen each other in a long time, and so you need to get all of those people and harmonize them and talk about the same subject. And obviously, you need to ask different questions to different interviews. If I had like little groups, if they were in the studio, I had to ask about, you know, some type of questions. If they knew Michael personally, I did ask also some questions. If they're not were in the studio, and if they didn't even met Michael, I had to ask different type of questions. So it always depends on who are you interviewing, but you try, because you do the script before, you try to create a harmony that will later fit on the script that you've done, and so it will be, you know, perfectly work on the audition process. So yes, it's you said it better than me. It's the orchestra director. That's what you have to do. But also I have to say it's an easy job for me, because they all jumped inside the, you know, when I call them or email them and say, you know, I presented myself, introduced myself, and said, I'm doing this. My name is Marcos. I'm a Spanish filmmaker. I'm doing this, and they all wanted to be part of it, and they all wanted to talk about Bruce. They all wanted to talk about Michael. They all wanted to talk about Thriller, because they you know, these people, they've been working on the biggest selling album in the history, and nobody knows who they are, and they only tell the stories to his family and friends in Christmas, but nobody cares about them anymore. So like someone calling from Spain and saying, I'm making this film about this, and you're an important part of the film, they did appreciate that, and they said, okay, well, I'm going to tell the story. So some of them like, oh yeah, please, you know, there were delighted to be part of the story, and you can see that in the film, and that's why, I think it works, and that's why my job was so easy, because I just had to ask one little question, and they just like everything
exploded.
Yeah, it's been 40 years. We need to talk about it.
Yeah, what I noticed also in between is that you feel that harmony. You feel that harmony, and that is because of your fantastic work, but also those people love Michael Jackson.
Yes,
they love Michael Jackson. They understood who he was, and that to me was a very in the middle. Suddenly, this huge emotion that came, where it was said that he was the most bullied man in the history of humankind, the most sweetest one and the most bullied one. And my tears just went over my cheeks. I had like, this is so horrific, because it's true. And still they do it. It's still, and people do not at all understand how words can destroy someone. And if you once put a lie into someone's head, even if they don't know that person, it sticks there. And I had like, he started out there something huge, and he went on to growing into dangerous. And after that, he had to defend himself. And they tried to knock him down. And I could see Bruce Swedien, his emotions, all the people. And it was a little bit in the middle of the film, and it felt times some kind of cathartic too, because it needed to be said. It needed to be said by those people who worked with him, who were close with him, who knew him. And thank you for that.
No, exactly. Thank you. You said important things. You said words can destroy people. They can. And during the process of making the film, creating the interviews and even editing the film, there was always a part I had to fight into myself that do we need to talk about Michael, about his personal ways, and because obviously there's a part in the documentary which I talk about how he recorded. He recorded in the dark. He never used papers. The mics he used and everything, and that's okay. That was part, but so do I have to talk about how he was as a human being? And I learned from the interviews that yes, because I didn't ask about his personal way of being, because I know how he was, but I didn't ask. But the interviews talked about it. It was every time I asked about like a professional recording studio day question, the answer went to how lovely was Michael and how he cared about the people, he cared about the world. So again, that's what I call their truth and my truth, and that's why I said, okay, I need to introduce that in the film. Even if some people can say to me, "Oh, you're just a Michael Jackson fan," and no, it's not me talking, it's them. That's how my voice doesn't appear in the documentary just once saying hello to Bruce Swedien, but the rest is them. They're talking, and those are people who knew Michael and who worked with Michael and who knew Michael for decades, and they all loved him. And remember, I was shooting this documentary when LN was at his peak. So it was really hard because I didn't know the opinions of those people. But finally, what I learned is that they all knew the truth, and they all loved Michael, and they still love Michael, and all the inputs they got from him, and everything they learned, being around Michael. And, everyone loved him. You can see even Bruce Swedien, he was crying, talking about Michael. And he says there will be no one, there has never been no one like Michael Jackson. There'll never be no one like Michael Jackson. And he's not just in a professional recording way. He means in a personal way. It's a human being.
Yeah.
So I think it was important, this middle part of the documentary, and for me to let the people talk about his personal experience with Michael.
Thank you. Yeah. Please.
Okay. On that note, we're moving into sort of the Disco Sucks movement, and just the fact that you chose to open the documentary with it and to sort of frame the context of production, the context of reception with that. Tyrell Jackson says in the documentary in Sonic Fantasy, people were saying disco was dead. To what extent does the Disco Sucks movement, combined with the decline of the music industry and the rise of the video games industry at the time, represent to you the scale of Michael Jackson's achievements with Bruce Swedien, Quincy Jones, and everyone involved with the making of Off the Wall and Thriller?
Well, I think this is one of the most important parts of the documentary. I did a lot of research because I started reading books, and there was some things about the Disco Sucks era, and I didn't know much about it. I was born in 1981, so I thought the music crisis started with internet, with Napster and all this stuff. So I did a lot of research, and yes, it's important because the Disco Sucks era, it's not only about music, it's about freedom. I did the premiere in France of Sonic Fantasy the other day, and after the movie finished, this man came to me and thanked me. And he was not a Michael Jackson fan. He said to me, "Thank you for talking about the Disco Sucks era, because at that moment I was a gay person in France at the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s. And for gay people at that moment, at least in France, I'm not saying the whole and the rest of the world, but at least in France, disco music was important for us because it was like our way of freedom. So when the Disco Sucks era started and they started to pulling disco music from the pubs and from the discos and from the shops, it was very hard for us. It was very hard because it was like attack to our freedom, to our way of dancing, our way of singing, our way of being. Music is very important to everyone. And he did appreciate that. And I talked to him, I had dinner with him that night, and he said to me that that was the worst moment in music he ever lived in. And it was, the music industry was falling. And going back to the documentary, when I started interviewing all those people who were part of Thriller, they all remember that. And it was like, yeah, it's the worst moment ever for music. So it's, as you said, it was important to explain that at the beginning of the film, to understand it's not just that Thriller is the best selling album in history of music. It's that it's when it happened. It happened when the music was in the worst moment ever. No one went to the music stores. It was because of Thriller that people went back to the music stores. And it's not me saying that. It's people who, the music historian, Steve Ivory, said that. And he knows about music more than anyone. And he said, Thriller saved the music industry, hands down. And it was already cracked. It was already broken. And so, as Quincy said, we need an album, to make the people come back to the stores. We need, and that's what they did. So you need to understand the context. And that's why I thought that, let's start with the music, Disco Sucks era, and the video game rise. And don't forget, when Thriller came out, the video game industry went bankrupt for a decade. So, that's how much important was Thriller, but not just for music, but for everything. It changed everything in popular culture.
Yeah.
Even that Sonic Fantasy is, it's my film. Sonic Fantasy will never reach to explain deeply how important Thriller was for the entertainment industry and for the popular culture. It's beyond belief.
Yeah, it goes further than just so many million sales, right?
Yeah,
it's on a cultural level throughout everything at that time.
There will be never, it was more than 100 million albums sold, and second one is like 40 or 50. It's like it will never reach Thriller. It's and every year it's selling, and every new generation. I'm happy. I also work with kids, and I'm very happy to see that they love Thriller. They listen to Thriller. They dance like Michael. So this is something that's going to be like forever.
Yeah.
And no one's going to stop it. No documentary is going to stop it.
No.
This is bigger than anything. And it started there. It started with the disco era and that part of our history.
Yeah. Wow. Lovely answer. Just a really powerful answer. So, Marcos, the closeness of Bruce Swedien and B was one of the most poignant moments of your sonic fantasy. Mm-hmm. And the fact of the creative process is that there are special people to whom one shows one's work in order to feel that it is ready. When did you feel that sonic fantasy was ready for your audience?
Oh, good question. Well, there's someone that Michael Prince. He's an engineer, and he worked with Michael. And he says it in the documentary, if Michael had his saying, that they will be still working on Thriller. Yeah. So it's. I'm not comparing myself to Michael, obviously, but I'm a little bit the same way. I would be still working on Sonic Fantasy. So there's you never feel that the project is finished, but you have to end it because there's a timeline, and there's you need to answer to the producers, and you need to have it ready. But yeah, it was. I think it's finished, but you always think you could have done this a little bit better and change this, change that. I try to not watch the film anymore. I never watch my films because I can get depressed and say, okay, this is not finished. This is not well. But with Sonic Fantasy, I think that I say everything I want to say. I think that they say everything that they want to say. And yes, you started talking about B and Bruce, and I did show I've got my B. This is my mm-hmm. wife, so I did show her the film, and she's not a Michael Jackson fan, and she enjoyed the film. So I knew that we did a good job, and this was one of my first clues that the film was finished and done and could be ready to spread to the whole world.
Mm. Did you talk to B also?
Oh yeah, I talked to her, but she didn't want to be interviewed. She was too shy. I tried to convince her, but she was too shy. So I didn't want to push her into the documentary. Yeah, but she was there on the interview the whole time with Bruce. So mm-hmm. she was by his side.
Mm-hmm. As always. Yeah.
Yes, and I did respect her privacy, and she said no, so I didn't. Okay, but I said you're going to be part of the documentary. Bruce talks about you, and I think it's important to. And she said that she was okay with that, but she didn't want to be on the film.
Oh, great. I have just
Karin,
one
you want
question.
To do final questions?
Yeah. What did you specifically learn from making this documentary in regard to Michael Jackson, his vision and his music?
Wow, a lot of things. I learned. One of the things I've learned is how much respect all this, because remember, all these people that I'm interviewing in Sonic Fantasy, they are the best of the best. They worked in not just Michael Jackson albums, but they've worked with with everyone, Frank Sinatra, Beatles, you name it, they're there, they've been there. So they know, they're the best in their working process. And I'm a Michael Jackson fan. I like everything he does. So when I was a kid, I was listening to his music. I thought he was the best. I still think he's the best. But I'm just, I have no music background, so it's just my opinion. But when you sit in front of these people that you go to their houses and they've got like 10 Grammys, they've got platinum discs on the wall, and they've worked in all those albums that you absolutely love, and they're best of the best. And they talk about Michael, and they love him, and they respect him, and they say he's at the best. He's at the top. There's Jerry Hay. He does trumpet, and he's one of the best of the world. And he said to me, I've worked with Fred Astaire, Barbara Streisand, Celine Dion, Michael Jackson, and undoubtedly Michael Jackson is the best of the best. It's at the top of the list, and that's what I've learned, how much respect other professional people have for Michael in the professional way he worked. And one of the moments is Bruce Swedien. Bruce Swedien is a tough man. Bruce Swedien, he doesn't make jokes. He's got the respect of all of the people. And Bruce Swedien cried when he remembered that Michael never missed a note during the recording, not just of Thriller, but the recording of all his albums. Bruce was there in all his albums, and he never missed a note, and he cried. So that's what I learned, how much respect the people in the music industry, they have to Michael.
And for Bruce.
Oh yeah, and Bruce, yeah, of course.
There's a tremendous amount of respect. And I think respect and respectability is something that we really need more of. When it comes to Michael Jackson, I do not think he was respected. So people think that what we do, academic appreciation of Michael Jackson, is a very strange thing, but it really comes down to respect and almost veneration and celebration of the artist.
Yes. I think a good way that people that are not Michael Jackson fan can start, can respect Michael, is listening from people that they work with Michael. And they see that, how much they respect Michael. And if you see people like, not just people that worked in the studio, other people in the music industry, if you see Madonna talking about Michael, at least that past years, she talks with, respect. If you listen to other artists talking about Michael that you admire, because maybe you can be a fan of Madonna, but you're not a fan of Michael, and you listen to Madonna saying, Michael was the best, hand down. You start thinking, okay, if Madonna, my idol, says that, maybe she's right. So I think it's important to have other people from the music, not just fans, but other people from the music industry, reminding the rest of the world how important was Michael for us.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, it's Michael Jackson's anniversary. What does this day mean to you and to Liz and to me, but to you first, his anniversary day?
I try to not think a lot about it. I don't do I do celebrate his birthday. I do celebrate the anniversary of an album, but not his passing. It was a very, very sad day for me. I remember perfectly where I was when I heard the news and what happened. So when the 25th of June comes, I don't know, there's something in my brain from the 23rd to the 27th that my brain blocks. I don't think about anything, and I just hope that passes as fast as possible. And suddenly I'm looking at my calendar and we're in the 27th of June and it says, okay, it's passed. So I just block myself. I don't think much about it. I've been invited to a lot of celebrations, and I know in different cultures, a passing is a celebration, and I do understand that. But it's a very sad day for me. So I try not to think about it. I just I don't go to any celebration. I don't put any Michael music. I just, hours go quick, please. And we all know what we were. We all know what happened. We all know how we feel, and every person has a way of dealing with this type of things. I've been to Forest Lawn a couple of times. I've flown to Los Angeles years later by myself, and I've gone to Forest Lawn, and I was there alone in front of Michael's place, and I think I've said everything I wanted to say to him there, and I cried everything I had to cry there. So I try not to be sad and forget about the anniversary. I've already, I'm sad enough every day thinking about Michael and that he's not he's not here with us or with his children. So it's something we all have to live with.
Yeah.
And everyone has a different way of looking at it, and we all have our own truths. No?
That's true. Yeah. And you, Liz?
Yeah, it's so interesting the way you approach the anniversary, Marcos, because for me, I just find that as the day draws closer, I feel this sort of sense of impending dread. Sort of an impending doom. It's like, oh, I'm going to be in such a bad mood, not knowing that I'm already in like in kind of a funk, in kind of a mire and deep. I do find myself being a little bit self-pitying, a little bit sorry for myself, and then as the day comes around, I find that it becomes more of a celebration of Michael's life. Yeah. I start to immerse myself in his music, immerse myself in his work. I think that it's now 13 years and it hasn't got easier. That's one thing I noticed, that with other deaths and other passings in my life, they generally get easier with time. But with Michael's, it just seems like such a wrench, I feel like he was torn away from us. I feel like he wasn't ready to go, and it wasn't his time to go. So I feel like to me that I still want to turn my grief into something. So I wrote an academic book called The Dangerous Philosophies of Michael Jackson. I don't know if you can see it there.
I saw it on your webpage.
Oh, you found it. And this year they brought out a journal issue called Michael Jackson's Artistic Contributions, Another Perspective. And that was curated by Isabelle Petitjean. So these things give me hope, because I feel like, okay, people are still engaged. People are still active. People are becoming fans. People are still producing amazing documentaries like Sonic Fantasy. Michael's legacy is still being written, and that's our duty. And I always find that it becomes quite a galvanizing time for me. That is I start to get into action, get into what can I do next? What can I promote? What can I create? And how can I further Michael's legacy? So it starts off in a bit of a mopey, sort of sad, sorrowful mood, and it turns into something quite active and dynamic.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, for me it's I don't know. I'm glad that I can edit this beforehand, schedule it, and then it goes out on the day. And then I think, because it's important, you have made an incredible tribute to not only Bruce, but simultaneously to Michael, and the respect they have for him. And I think on a day like that, that's very important. Yeah. Personally, I'm more the person that would love to stay in bed, put her head under the pillow, and that's it. But yeah. Because I can't fight this thought, what Liz said. It was too soon. He was not ready yet to go. He had so much in store for himself, for his children. And I have there are just a few people who are responsible for this. In my feeling, it's the words they used. It's the way they treated him that brought him to this end, and nothing else. It's not because he was addicted to anything. If he was addicted, it was because he had to numb the pain. He had to numb the pain. You can't stand that. If people tell constant lies about you, and yeah, I mean, and that is a hard one for me to get my head around, because this is not just something that happens. It happened to Michael, and he happens to be the best entertainer in the world and will always be. And we've done an episode on Shakespeare versus Michael Jackson, Shakespeare 400, Michael Jackson. We both believe that in 400 years, everyone studies his art.
Yeah.
But that just that simple idea that people do not respect someone else and deliberately destroy someone with their foul words and stories that are not true. That to me is something that I want to put my head under the pillow and just, yeah. But I'm happy that we have done this. And I have to say that it was Liz who said to me, Karen, what are we going to do for the 25th? And I said, nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. And then she said, then I invited you, and you said yes, and it came all, the universe always works. And I know for sure, this was Michael. He said, hey, Karen, come on. You can't just, excuse my language. No, I'm not going to say it, but you have to be there for me, okay? Just speak to this man. He made a brilliant documentary and let the world know. And so I'm happy that we can do that. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm pretty sure that I do feel like, yeah, as you said, the universe works and makes things work, and it's been an honor to me for me to be here with you. I did a little research, and I appreciate the work you do. From now on, I'm gonna listen to the podcast. I'm gonna follow you and your work and your amazing people, and it's been an honor to be with you. And to end this in a positive way, just a little story. I was a week ago. They invited me to a school because they wanted to interview me, the kids, because I'm a director here in Spain, so I went to the school and I had this whole classroom, and one of the kids said to me, "Who's the most famous person you've ever met?" And I said, Michael Jackson. And the whole class went, wow. one kid, they were like 6-year-old kids. One kid started crying, but crying that he had to leave the classroom. Teacher got him and left. And then when he came back and he said to me, "I'm sorry, I had to leave." And I started crying, but Michael Jackson is my hero.
Oh.
So, as you said, things are still happening. There's new fans coming, and that made not my day, made my year. This 6-year-old kid saying Michael Jackson is my hero. So this is something that's not stopping, and people like you doing this type of communications to the world. It's very important, and it is as much as important that me doing Sonic Fantasy. Or your book, we have to create and leave Michael's, this is the legacy we're going to leave for the kids in the future, because they'll listen to this podcast, they'll read your books and they'll see my films. And this is, so we've got an important job to do now.
Yes.
Yes, I agree.
fabulous.
Shall we close it on this note, or do we want last thoughts about the documentary Sonic Fantasy?
I have to say that I've been looking for, I teach Michael Jackson studies, and I've been looking for, tools to teach. And I think Sonic Fantasy is just something so brilliant for students. And I think that it came out of left field, it came out of the blue almost. And I just think that it's a wonderful, wonderful teaching tool. And I love that you were in school and you were with the 6-year-olds and that and then one of them said, Michael Jackson is my hero. I just love that. And I feel like teaching the next generation about Michael is really where it's at. It's where all the vibrancy and the life and the energy really is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I hope, by the way, that you can make a director's cut and we get this beautiful DVDs with the full documentary and behind the scenes. And
I hope so. Yes, I will. I 100% will do that. We'll do that with more behind of the scenes, with all, parts that they were not in the documentary. I'm going to introduce them in the DVD or Blu-ray edition.
Fantastic. Then thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Liz, let's say it's all for love.
It's all for love.
It's all for love.